In a rural area of Colombia, there is this colonial house where the experience that I'm about to tell you comes from. And it's one of the most haunting stories that I've heard to this day. I think near the end, you're going to know exactly why I find it this way. You ready? My name is Edwin, and this is Paranormal Club. Welcome back, Spookies, to another episode. This time, we have this campfire style story, and it's true. This one was submitted to me by Gabby a long time ago, and it showed up on one of our podcasts. But I find this story so immersive and so haunting. I still think about it to this day. So what happened was, back in the 90s, Gabby was a little girl, and she was going to be moving into this colonial house. This house is 200 or 250 years old, so it's pretty old. There's terracotta tiles, there's white clay walls, old roofs, and sometimes it's so peaceful there that you can also hear pigeons kind of making their nests in the different areas of the house. You can kind of hear them doing the whole coo, 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 coo in the middle of the night. Another thing that happened there is that since it was rural and it was those areas that sometimes are hot, and as you're walking down, you feel that coolness of the tile against your feet, there was a sense of, this house feels cool, it feels nice, right, to be out there. And I've always imagined houses like that being a part of nature itself, right, like those kind of colonial houses. And this one was kind of large, right? You had a kitchen, a guest room, an old kind of smoking room, like as in they used to smoke meats there because it was dark and like ashy. And they had a courtyard there. So it was like a childhood dream, right, to live there. But in that same place that felt and looked so happy, so joyful, so peaceful, also had a very dark secret. And the thing was that this house had seen a lot of different important events, right? Cholera, war from the Spanish colonial times, and all those unsettling things that happened during that era. So there was a lot of memories, a lot of stories that were engraved inside those walls. This is where it gets interesting, right? Because Gabby's family moves in, they get settled, and everything's fine, right? They like the place, they like the area. But as they start exploring more of their surroundings and living the day-to-day life, they find out that they might not be alone at the house. Now, Gabby had this luck that her mom was spiritually sensitive. So if there were any kind of ghosts around, any kind of spirits that were lingering, the mom wouldn't be like, you're just making that up. No, she would be like, let's find out what this is, right? This is where it leads to the very first event, right? Gabby had this cousin, Javier, small. And as he's going in there, he's in the house already. He sees this man in black come in, and he thinks it's the uncle. So he's like, "Hey, uncle. Hey, Theo." But the uncle ignores him, completely ignores him. So he's like, "Okay, that was weird." Later on, he tells the mom, like Gabby's mom, it's like, "Hey, I just saw my uncle, but you didn't say hi. Like, is everything all right?" Now remember, the uncle here, like Javier's uncle, is Gabby's dad. But Gabby's father was away for work, so he wasn't around. Who did he see? Now, it was an actual stormy night, how a typical scary story begins normally, right? There's thunder, lightning, and rain. And every single time there's lightning, it lights up the entire room of Gabby. Gabby's right there in her bed. Now, as she's looking out the window of, the storm going about, she suddenly sees this man, a black figure, large frame, standing right outside of her window. Annoyed, Gabby just gets up, closes the curtains, and goes back to sleep. You would think, wow, what a brave person, right? Well, in the morning, Gabby wakes up, and she starts feeling something itchy. She notices there's something in her hair. Turns out there's twigs and sticks and grass and dirt. She looks down at her feet, and they're muddy, and the sheets are dirty with mud. And that's when she realizes that she might have sleptwalked and been out in the rain. Early in the morning, she's trying to clean the sheets, right? She's like, oh, geez, I'm going to get in trouble. So she tries not to tell her mom. But the mom finds out, right? She sees the bucket with soap and everything, her trying to clean and wash the sheet right there. She's like, what happened, right? That's when she tells, like, she might have sleptwalked. So the mother decides to lock the doors at night, like, so that she doesn't leave again. And where did Gabby go? What happened? And who was that man? Unfortunately, that was not the last time that she saw this man. Turns out, in another dark and stormy night, everything's happening again. Thunder, lightning, rain. And all of a sudden, when the lightning strikes, she sees the inside of her room, but she realizes that she's not alone. This time there's a man out there. That man that was outside of the window, he's now inside and standing right there holding the door open. She doesn't feel scared. She doesn't feel irritated and panic or anything. Instead, she gets up, closes the door, kind of annoyed that she's being woken up. The man's gone. She goes back to sleep. The thing is, even the first time that she saw him, she saw this man with like white, yellowish, glowing eyes. And this was the same thing that she was seeing inside of the room this time. Again, who was this man in black? Now, I want you to remember, like, she and her family, like, really liked that house, right? It was peaceful. It was joyful. It felt nice. Like, it was like a beautiful place. And they really seemed to enjoy their time there. But strange things were happening and everybody was noticing. And this next one is about the children. So by this time, Gabby's little brother is like playing with stuff like toy trucks and you know, soccer balls and stuff like that. He's old enough for that now. And every once in a while they could hear, like out of the corner of the room, a soccer ball bouncing. And you can actually see it. It's straight up just bouncing by itself until it finally settles on the floor and stays still. Also, there were sounds of trucks, like little toy trucks that they would normally fill with pebbles and rocks and stuff to play around. You could hear them. And there was one time when this got really creepy, and it wasn't just Gabby experiencing this. This is someone else. So by this time, right, it's Easter. It's Easter time. And it's a big deal in Colombia, right? You have to, it's like a Catholic kind of thing. So you can only eat fish. There's different traditions that you do, right? And Gabby's grandmother was there with her at the house. And one time they went out, and when they were coming back, they saw the grandmother just kind of looking very uncomfortable, standing outside, like sitting outside. And they're like, what's wrong? And then she explains, hey, I was near the kitchen, and out in the courtyard, I hear the sounds of balls bouncing around, plastic toys, being moved around, but the lights are off. So she says, hey, thinking that it's Gabby and the little brother still there. They're like, hey, you guys, like, turn on the light. Like, what the heck are you doing, right? But they still keep playing. She goes out to scold them. She realizes that the courtyard is completely empty. And it's what made her think that, all these things that were happening maybe weren't bad or evil. They were intending no harm. It was just sad. The ghosts of children playing around in the courtyard by themselves in the dark. Now, this house had wooden walls that were so old and so cracked that you could see through them. And there was one other situation where this friend that was there, it turns out, first off, the mother was pretty much taking classes at the library because the technology that was around the area, it was kind of lacking, right? So they didn't have a landline. So in order to learn, stuff about the internet and everything, the mom was taking night classes. One time this friend was over at the house, and through the cracks, the friend could see or could hear and kind of see the shape of this old woman that was praying. And the whole time they felt like they were being watched through the cracks of the walls. So they started researching, what could this have been? And later on, as they start asking around, they find out that this elderly couple had died in the house of cholera. Unfortunately, all these thoughts of, hey, maybe this thing is peaceful, this thing isn't going to harm us, it's not doing anything to us, it's just this old lady and little kids playing around late at night, nothing's going to go bad. Suddenly, things start turning a little bit dark. So one night, they are at home, and all of a sudden, all the lights go off. Like they were watching TV, and everything just goes blank. They hear a chair being dragged. Start hearing noises out there in the middle of, like, imagine, like you're out there in this colonial old house. These noises aren't stopping, right? It's like violent now. Things are happening. Things are they're freaking out. So the kids, they run outside. They have no other choice. They're out there freaking out, waiting for everything, like for everything to pass, but the sounds are still happening. Chairs dragging, noises in the kitchen, kind of like pots and stuff. It's like violent. It's like something's going on in there. Something's rattling, kind of like an earthquake. The power comes back on, and everything goes silent. And that's when the support comes in from the mother, right? The mom is like, yeah, something weird's going on here. We need to get some help. So they find these, like, what they call like white witches, right? It's people that can offer spiritual help around this house. And she decides to, like, this person comes in and they stay over for the night. So as she's staying there, she mentions that she had her own experience at the house. A presence being there, footsteps being dragged. Something is in that room. And she's like, her final verdict is like, hey, you know what? Something's here and it's territorial and it doesn't want me here, so I'm leaving. And she never went back. So it's Easter night now. And Gabby's mom is praying. Everything's quiet. The doors are closed. Everything seems normal. When all of a sudden it gets strangely quiet. Like something's about to happen. And that's when they start to hear children playing outside in the corridor. Toys are moving. Things are happening. The house is active now. And everybody's kind of like staring at each other when all of a sudden they start hearing heavy footsteps start approaching. And then this loud voice, a male voice, saying, "Stop praying." And they start hearing somebody kicking at the door, like knocking on this door. By the way, this door is barely held together by this like silver latch. It's tiny. And they're just hoping that it's going to hold. And as it's getting louder and louder and louder, they start hearing these voices of the children playing and going outside, just kind of, roaming around, and they start fading slowly. And then the man, or whatever that thing was that was outside, goes away. And that marks Gabby's most terrifying night at that house. Later on, they start investigating, searching around, and what might have happened at this house. And they find out that there had been a well out in the courtyard, but it was sealed. And one thing that was strange is that nothing grew on top of it, no matter what, right? But then they find out that 2 children had died there. They had passed away. So they were not in peace, right? Maybe because, who knows, they might have been left there. Maybe it was because it was such a tragic death that they could never leave and their souls are trapped forever in that house. The stories of that kind of remain unknown, right? They later contacted a spiritual group to help them move on. But it was then that actually marked the end of the family's time at that house. Now, you would think that this was the end of the story, right? But turns out years later, they start, the grandmother passes away and they realize, let's get rid of the house. So they're going to demolish it. And sad times, right? When you have a place like that with so much history that is just going to be gone. So they start doing that. And, the people that were helping, working on it, supposedly the story goes is that they found gold underneath the kitchen. And it supposedly was valued like at $5 million or something like that. Something like a huge amount. Now that would have been kind of cool, right? To find gold at your house. The thing was that they also found bodies in the walls. Now, I remember looking into this when I heard this story. This actually happens. And it turns out there are a lot of stories out there about indigenous people practicing that. Somebody passes away and they put them in the walls of the houses. You know, they had sold the house to a construction company. And there are things that, you know, people say when when you find a house with treasure in it or with secrets like bodies in the walls, that you get cursed. So you kind of have to stop. And some people actually believe that. They will refuse to continue construction if they find anything like that. And I don't know if this was a coincidence, but they say that that construction company went bankrupt after that. The property, unfortunately, was just left abandoned. So Gabby grew up, you know, after her childhood, realizing that there are spirits out there, that there are things, entities that can roam around a property if they have unfinished business. Things like, you know, dark things like somebody pounding against your door, to things like little kids playing in the courtyard. You know, there's good things, there's dark things, evil things, things that shouldn't be there and that people would normally want to get rid of. But it forever changed her perspective of what's out there. And I feel like those of us who have experienced paranormal things, events, our own paranormal encounters, it changes your perspective in a really strange way, that you don't feel the need to prove it to anybody anymore. You just know it's real and you accept it that way. Sometimes, unfortunately, the only thing you can do when you encounter things like these are to leave. And I'm glad that's what the family did. You know, the place where I'm recording from right now, if you're watching on video on YouTube or Spotify, this place was built under kind of similar circumstances. When they were building out the property, some of the people that were helping with the construction said that they found pots of gold. And the thing is, even though, you know, you might be completely poor and broke, and gold might seem like, wow, you just hit it big, a lot of these people refuse to take that because they know what it means. If you take that, you're going to be followed. Something's going to affect you. The thing is that at this property, it just not even that long ago, I had my own paranormal experience here. I was downstairs. This is a 2-story place, right? I was downstairs. We were watching TV in the kitchen TV. And all of a sudden, clear as day, we're the only people in the house, hear footsteps upstairs. Boom, 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 boom. The dog that was downstairs sleeping, she's this lazy dog. She looks up and starts barking. Woof, woof, woof. As I get there, I'm like, what is she looking at? And I go upstairs and there's no one there. The only people in the house. Right? And that's not the only thing. Like sometimes, and people say this, like when they're downstairs, they hear footsteps up there, like clear footsteps. Right? People moving around upstairs. You know, am I terrified of being here, like with this swing set behind me and this old abandoned kind of part of the property? Yeah, I'm kind of freaking out. There's no Wi-Fi here, so I can't really read any of the comments that you say. So I don't feel like, you know, I feel like completely alone here. If you have your own encounter, your own story that you want me to tell here, you know where to find me. Edwin@paranormalclub.com is the email. You can also find me on TikTok, Instagram, and Facebook. Find our social media account is Paranormal Club Pod, Pod at the end. All one word, Paranormal Club Pod. You can find us on Facebook, TikTok, and Instagram. I hope to see you next time. Let me know what you think of campfire stories and if you're a fan of them, so we can make more of these. But that's all I got. Thank you very much for listening or watching. Keep it scary, everyone. See you soon.